I did it.
Hello and welcome back to our channel. This is God Equals Reality, where we explain God in reality because God is reality. I am Eno. This is my auntie Tiffy. Say hi, Tiffy.
Hey.
Please like and share and subscribe. All the YouTube stuff to help us grow our channel. If you really like our content, thank you in advance. Now, Tiffy, where do we leave off?
So we left off chapter 1 of James. So just to recap, James, of course, in my mind and how it relates to me, is that is one of the most powerful books because it talks about and deals with all the things that if I say the biggest thing that we deal with on this earth, which is trials and tribulations. And that's how it starts out. God tells us to count it joy when we face trials and tribulations because He's making us perfect by giving us patience, because that is what we have to go through. It's never going to stop. It doesn't matter if you're a believer or not. In fact, when you're a believer, you get it at least a lot more just because you become a threat. But He gives us guidance and He tells us in how we're supposed to deal with that if we lack anything, to ask him for wisdom and understanding so that we know exactly what's going on. And it helps us through that trial and tribulation even better, because we got him. So that's, pretty much packs a punch in chapter 1. I ended off chapter 1 talking about, being doers of the word, not just hearers. And God wants us to be swift to hear and slow to speak. I did mention that that was one of my issues I'm kind of working on because I can run my mouth all day if if somebody lets me. So learning to listen more
It's true.
is definitely it's true. Oh yeah, most definitely. But so now into chapter 2. Of course, James packs a punch. He only has 5 chapters, but going on to chapter 2, this one is really dealing with. It starts off talking about partiality and how important it is not to show partiality amongst people. Period. Um, Now, of course, his example is about, 2 men that come in the church. One's rich, one's poor. You better not say, hey, to the rich one, you sit over here in this good area and, treat the poor one badly. I think that also applies to anyone. How we should be treating people the way we would want to be treated, period. No matter if you're a believer, you're an unbeliever, if you're on the street, because when he talks about treating your neighbor as yourself, your neighbor is any other soul, any other being on this earth is your
Yeah.
neighbor.
No matter
So,
what color, creed, race, culture, background, whatever, you name it. A
exactly.
human being made in the image of God is the only criteria and the only attribute you need.
Hmm. And going all the way back to our first episode, right? When he breathed the spirit and man became a living soul, that means that every living soul on this earth, God had something to do with. And we need to recognize each living soul, every single person walking on this earth, as a created being by God, just like everyone else, first and foremost. So, after that whole partiality and making sure that we're treating people, our neighbors, as we treat ourselves, as we want to be treated, he goes into that faith. Um, Faith without works is dead. And I know that that's one of those common sayings that a lot of people have heard. But just to kind of like reiterate and explain that a little bit more, which the Bible does in chapter 2 of James, he's basically saying that you can have all this faith and boast in your faith, and that's good. However, there should be something that you're doing that is showing your faith. The way that he says that, and I love the way he says it, is he says, you show me your faith without works, and I will show you my faith by my works. That means I don't even have to say anything. It's about what I'm doing should be able, everyone should be able to see and know how I believe because of what I'm doing. So I don't have to boast in my faith in any way, shape, or form. My actions should speak for my faith. So show me your faith without works, and I'm going to show you my faith by my works, because that is the true faith. And so that's one of the key points of about faith in chapter 2 that starts it off. The other thing that's really important that he goes into is he says, "You believe in God, so do the demons." So, so that's not saying nothing, because the demons know God and they shiver and tremble because they know who he is. They know how powerful he is, and they're afraid. So when people talk about just knowing God, it's so much deeper than that, and it's so much more than that. So, and I'm not going to go all extra into that, but he definitely brings that up for a reason, because just knowing who God is not enough. You have to understand and get to know him, period,
Yes.
and follow his commandments.
Yes. He says, if you love me, you keep my commandments. Loving
Exactly.
someone is actually knowing who they are and appreciating who they are. So
Mhm.
that's how you appreciate God, by keeping his commandments. That's how you appreciate the life he gave you, the gifts he gave you, the reality issues you live in. It's by keeping his commandments is how you show you love God. Not just knowing who
Respect. Yes, respect, right? That's showing him respect. He says something, you do it. So John 14:15. And I'm sorry, I just have to throw in there the way that I remember that verse is because myself and my daughter's birthday is November 14th and 15th. And I'm like, that's a good way to remember it. When I tell you to do something and not putting myself in God's shoes at all in any way, shape, or form. This is just sometimes I find things that will help me remember where a certain verse is, what, book, chapter, verse. And that was one of the ways that I remembered it. Me being a mother and my daughter being my daughter and me telling her things. Of course, I expect her to listen, and if she doesn't listen, it's disrespectful. So, you love me, you're going to keep my commandments, you're going to do what I say to do. Understandable. And that's how I remember that verse. Um, but do you have anything else to add, nephew, before we go on?
I think you pretty much nailed that one in. And I
Okay.
like the reference to the parents and the 14 to 15, by the way.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Uh-huh. Thank you. Thank you. So going all into that, after uh, you know, him explaining to us that, demons believe also, then he goes into how belief is counted as righteousness. And of course, he brings up Abraham. Um, Abraham, book of Genesis, where God told him to sacrifice his only son. And I'm not going to go into, the entire story because we could be here all day. Um, but I am emphasizing for everyone, if you're not already familiar with the story of Abraham, that is very, very important, because that situation is like a replication of what he's going to do and what he does with Jesus. And it's found in the book of Genesis. Um, but Abraham, he says, hey, sacrifice him. Now that you waited all this time to get your one and only son, sacrifice him. Abraham didn't ask no questions. He didn't think twice. He's like, this is what God said to do. I'm about to do it. And he took Isaac onto that mountain and was ready to sacrifice him. And poor little Isaac, he even asked, where's the lamb? Where's the he knew something was missing. He knew it wasn't right. But again, talk about obedience. He was obedient and he was doing what his daddy said, and likewise Abraham was doing what his daddy said. But as soon as he got up there, he's like, okay, I just making sure you understand how important it is to follow my commandments. And so Abraham was accounted as righteous because he listened to God, right? And that's a famous story. But the thing that got me um, the most is right after he used Abraham as the example of faith and works, he brought up Rahab. And in the book of James 2, Rahab, of course, is she was a harlot and she was a Canaanite, which I had to take a double take. I started, highlighted, and I'm like, wait a minute. He's bringing up Rahab, the harlot, in another example of faith and how it was counted to her. Like he just talked about it. We know what Abraham did. So going all the way back to Joshua 2 is where Rahab comes in. And like I said, Rahab was a Canaanite. She was a harlot. And to make a long story short as possible, because I can talk, um, Joshua sent some men to Jericho because they were going to take it over and they wanted to, Joshua said, yeah, go spy out the land, see what we're looking at. And they went to her house. And obviously, must be, small area, somebody, telling the king that, hey, these men from God's folks, they came and they went to Rahab's house. So of course he sends some people to Rahab's house, like, where's those men at? Because I know they came. And Rahab says, yeah, you're right. They did come. But send them on their way because I don't know them. They are my people. So she played it real good. But yeah, she said, no, they're not here because I don't know them. They did come. But you might want to hurry up because they're probably, you know, not too far. So
Right.
she gets rid of those people. And then what she did was she hid them on top of her roof. The thing that stood out to me the most is, for one, she's a harlot. For two, she wasn't in the line of God's people. She was a Canaanite. And for three, she recognized who God is, right? And what he's done. Because her words, what she says in that book is that she heard about their God and she heard about how God departed the Red Sea and saved his people. And when she heard that story, she said, oh, your God has to be the God that's in heaven and on this earth. And therefore, I'm not about to turn y'all in because I know that you serve a God that's a real God. And it was funny because at the end, after she did all that and said, hey, I got rid of them folks that was looking for you. By the way, remember me, my mama, my daddy, my children, my brothers, my whole household. When it comes time to the end, remember us. Remember what I just did for y'all so
Right.
that, we could be saved. Because they knew that they were taking over the land.
This is what I find so fascinating about that story, and it actually appears, this concept appears again a few times. Um, it's that she lied. She
Exactly.
lied and found favor in God. Now, this may surprise a lot of people, but thou shalt not lie is technically not a commandment. It's
Correct.
thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
the people coming were not her neighbors. She recognized who her neighbor was, who are the people of God, and who he was protecting, who he was and who his people were, and the people that were against and coming to slay the people that kept the commandments and kept the righteousness of God. That's why
Mm-hmm.
she had found favor.
Yes, they weren't her physical neighbor, but she recognized that your neighbor is any soul on this earth. And she did what she ought to do because she knew who they served. and that was the utmost respect. I mean, of course, she was looking out for herself too, but yes, that's the key, that she lied. And it's just so interesting, and that's why that story is very interesting to me, and the fact that she compared her to Abraham, because that is a I've heard several people refer to lying as, I'm not saying that lying is right or good,
Right, right.
but there are circumstances like these where sometimes if it's about protecting somebody else.
But this is why it reminds me of several things. Like Jesus comes to talk about the intent of the heart. He taught us the main thing around his focus of what he's talking about when he's here preaching is talking about the intent of the heart. That
Mm,
reminds me of that as well of as the fact that when I'm saying bear false witness against your neighbor, like for the fact of it is that because the intent of the heart of the people that came to the door, the people she
mhm.
lied to is what I'm saying. Those were not her neighbor. She did not
Oh,
bear false
yes. Okay.
to
Hmm.
those people as being her neighbor
Hmm.
because they were coming to harm the people of God. Like, and it also is the reference of when he gives the new definition of what a Jew is now. Because a Jew is
Mm.
no longer by blood. A Jew is
Hmm.
who keeps the commandments of Christ and the Lord and the Creator. That is a Jew in the eyes of God. So
Yes.
all of that connects to me. She saw who were the commandments, who were the people who were her neighbor, and she did not bear false witness. She protected them.
Hmm.
So it's not necessarily a sin just to lie in itself.
Correct.
The
It's
intent
about
of
your
the
heart.
heart.
Hmm. Hmm. Yes. Good point. Good point, nephew. The other thing that's very interesting too about good old Rahab, like I said, she was a harlot, she was a Canaanite, and um, she ended up marrying Salmon, which was in the line, or he is in the line of Judah. He's an Israelite in the 12 tribes. And then she married Salmon, which Rahab and Salmon ended up having Boaz, and then Boaz ended up having Obed. Obed ended up having Jesse, and Jesse ended up having David, which we know that David in the Davidic line is the Davidic line of Jesus. So she ended up in the family by marriage after that. So that's another example of how much she believed. She converted, and she's like, yeah, I seen it. I know. I believe in your God. And I believe that he is the God that is over heaven and earth. And therefore, I'm about to make some changes in my life. So again, powerful statement for Rahab, and that stood out to me just for those all those reasons. Like nephew pointed out, it's about the intent in your heart, and she was trying to do nothing but good because she knew that it was about good people, and she recognized that it was a good and evil situation. And what side are you going to choose? What side are you going to go on? Because at the end of the day, it's either one or the other. Either you're representing God and you're representing good, or you're going to represent the other side, which is evil. And it's a choice. It has been a choice from the very beginning. So recognize it. And that's all I have. And nephew, if you have anything else, feel free because I'll keep going.
Nah, that's all. That was a great one. I added in everything I needed to add in to we'll continue this. If you have anything in the comments that you want to let us know that you want us to talk about or break down or any questions you want us to answer, please do let us know in the comments. And please like, share, subscribe. Again, all the YouTube stuff that you're supposed to do to help us if you like our content to spread it to others. And
Yes.
we'll see you next week.
Yes. Have a good night. And thank you guys
Night.
for joining. Bye bye.